Hello. I want to talk about the presence of slavery in the New Testament. This is a very controversial topic. However, I believe a very important part of the issue is within the Old Testament. In Genesis 28, God told humanity to have dominion over the earth, to rule and subdue it. With the creation of humanity, God gave certain rights, privileges, responsibility, and accountability. Humanity chose to implement an institution of enslaving one another. So whether God agrees or disagrees is not the issue. Either way, he has to recognize slavery as a choice made by humanity and allow humanity to live with its decision. However, in recognizing a system that allows, in some instances, for one person to commit atrocities towards another, God in his good nature has a perspective on how humanity should behave. In examining the New Testament books, Ephesians, Revelations, and Luke, I noticed three principles that highlighted God's perspective about slavery in the New Testament. First, in reading Ephesians 6, verses 5 through 9, Paul urges slaves to be obedient to their master and work if though they were servants to Christ. He then tells masters to do the same unto their servants and not to be cruel to them. In this particular passage, I believe Paul gives great insight of God's perspective on servitude, that it should not be a system of abuse, but instead a relationship of mutual respect for one another as human beings. Secondly, in the same scripture, Paul also reveals that God is not subject to the slave and master hierarchy that humanity has implemented in the system of servitude. The end of verse 9, Paul reminds slave masters that they have a master also in heaven, and that master looks upon them the same as though they were the slaves. Revelation 6:15 details this same godly perspective. In judging humanity, God would not be swayed by the hierarchy that people utilize to separate from one another. Instead, the scripture tells how slaves and slave masters, kings and servants will all be judged by God. God specifically reminds us that he has no respect of men. Finally, in Luke 7, Jesus responds with an amazing level of favor and exaltation towards a slave-owning centurion soldier who was concerned about the health and well-being of his slave. Jesus is speaking in this passage and was marveled at the level of faith the soldier was exercising on behalf of a slave. This gives great insight on how God values our faith, especially when it's for the betterment of others. The soldier viewed and valued the servant's life as a human being and not just a slave. The slaves of the New Testament show up totally different from the slaves of the Martha of the United States dark past. The slaves of the past of the United States did not have the level of humanity, respect, or compassion surrounding their existence like the slaves of the New Testament. I think the moral implications involved are very apparent. Humanity will always devise systems to exalt one set of persons over another. Trying to gain advantages in life are common, but removing respect, humanity, and human rights makes everyone involved less than human. In the quest for gaining advantages, humanity must remember that God is watching and that he still expects us to treat each other as human beings and not animals. Although an inhumane system of slavery may thrive in the earth, advocates and participants of it must still be judged by God in the end. I think the 21st century black church can benefit from understanding that God is not against servitude. God is against inhumanity in servitude. Jesus states that we should all be slaves and servants to one another. We are called to be servants for the kingdom, just as Christ came as a servant. Thank you so much for your time.